Hello, welcome. It's another Album of Record podcast. I'm Craig, joined as always by Andrew. How's it going, Andrew?
It is really hot in my house for some reason, so I'm trying not to sweat too much on the episode today, but otherwise I'm doing pretty good. How are you, Craig?
Get yourself a handkerchief.
Yeah.
And dab away.
That's the problem with the bald head, there's just nothing to absorb the sweat, and so it just rolls all over your head when you sweat.
I recently saw the Avett Brothers, and I didn't have them on my list of bands to talk about today. I kind of forgot to talk about that show, but they are so into their alt country stomp and clap, whatever vibe they have. But their lead singer had like the perfect back pocket handkerchief to wipe his brow between songs.
Yeah.
I was like, even his handkerchief has an aesthetic.
Got to do it.
Yeah. Well, don't have much to say about this one, but we're going to start off on a down note. A fan died at an Oasis show after apparently falling from some distance. And I think that capped the London dates for the Oasis reunion show.
I think they actually still have one more yet.
Okay.
I think they maybe even two more. They're doing like 5 or 6 shows there, which in and of itself is just incredible. And again, we talked about this a little bit already, but just watching these clips and seeing or hearing people talk about it who've been to these shows, like this has got to be one of the all-time most successful comeback reunion tours, whatever you want to call it. Now, I know they're on their home turf, but I suspect the vibe will be fairly similar when they come to the US. I think, not exactly the same, but I think it's going to be equally huge when they come here. This is, you see a lot of these reunions that are clearly money grabs. And we talked about this even a little bit, questioning whether maybe this was a money grab. Because at that point, we didn't yet really know what the vibe was going to be. It had only been one show. But I think it's pretty clear from these clips, like, they're bringing it. Like, they came to play. They are not mailing these shows in. So it's been a really joyous run so far. And that's why I feel like this is kind of a newsworthy thing. I mean, it's always a newsworthy thing when somebody dies at a show, but it's such a vibe kill for this to have such an unfortunate accident. And, you just think about like things you just would never in a million years imagine would happen when you go to a concert, is that you'd be at risk of, falling to your death. And I have no idea what happened. I'm not even going to try and project, but it's definitely a pretty just shocking thing and really put a little bit of a sour note on what had otherwise been a pretty flawless run so far. And the one thing I was going to talk about is not with any judgment at all. This is absolutely no judgment, but when I first heard about it, I was curious, are they going to postpone any shows, or anything like that? And they are going to just keep playing the shows. But yeah, I don't know. You're right. There's not a lot we can say about this, but I don't know. It was just such a heartbreaking thing to see what had otherwise been just nothing but good news out of this.
Yeah, and you don't want to stack rank tragedies, but I do find this to be, people do fall at American sporting events from time to time, from upper decks and different things. And I find this a lot different than when somebody gets crushed in a mosh pit or whatever, or those scenarios feel like the venue and the band and security were much more involved. This is just a random tragedy. So one of our favorite topics is up next. We're back into the streaming wars again. You wanted to talk a little bit about YouTube, and then obviously we always compare everything to Spotify and Apple Music. Why don't you kick us off?
Well, Spotify is in the news because Daniel Ek, their founder, CEO, he apparently donated money or invested in an AI company that's working on AI weapons, military weapons, which, obviously is not something I think a lot of us are thrilled about. I can't imagine a lot of people are stoked about that. I don't think that's how we want to see, artists, money or contributions being used for that sort of purpose. And as a result, several artists have begun pulling their music from Spotify. Not major artists. It's like King Gizzard, Deerhoof. Is that which one it is? Deerhoof? One of the Deer bands, Deerhoof. I'm trying to think. I think there was a couple others. And it just brings, sort of Spotify back into the spotlight. And we have talked a lot about, sort of our complicated feelings with Spotify, because I still genuinely believe that Spotify is the best overall experience for a music fan in terms of their app,
Algorithm.
their algorithm. I think those things are very positive for the hardcore music fan. And it was interesting to me listening to, IndieCast talked about this a little bit in their last episode. And I thought it was kind of interesting that, I think it was Stephen Hayden who had commented that he thought that Spotify was for the normies. And I mean, I guess it is, but like, I still feel like for the hardcore fan, it's also still the best algorithm. Like, if you want the best predictive algorithm that's going to find you music that you like, I've tried all of them, and I always go back to Spotify for that main reason.
Well, I agree with him, though. I think everybody has a Spotify account, and because they've got the free tier, they capture a lot of people that they wouldn't otherwise capture. But I think those of us who are on the paid tier and who would like to pay even more for the high quality streaming, I think they play to a wider market. The other thing is that because of their investment in podcasts, for whatever that's worth, they captured a lot of podcast people by making Joe Rogan exclusive for at least a year.
Mm-hmm.
And so normies, if you will, are there a lot. But that probably brings us to YouTube, because you want to talk about a streaming service for normies. Everybody and their mother has YouTube.
Yeah, and Hayden had talked about this too. Like, he was talking about how much he uses YouTube for listening to music. And I know that that's especially popular amongst younger people. They primarily listen to music on YouTube. And I find it just interesting because, again, I don't want to be the spokesperson and apologist for Spotify, but they are constantly getting hammered for their lack of payment to artists. And it just made me wonder, like, what is YouTube's contribution to artists? Where
Talk about a free tier.
And people on YouTube are constantly taking entire albums and putting them on their own channel and streaming it and trying to make some quick money before they get copyright strikes. And maybe they catch it eventually, but this stuff is all over the place on YouTube.
But YouTube will also identify that, monetize it for the artist, and pay the artist. So if I take a popular song by Taylor Swift and I make it the backdrop of my slideshow, and then advertising is placed on top of that video, I believe that money does not come to me as the poster. It goes to the artist whose intellectual property is being used.
It actually depends. If it gets flat out, like, usually what'll happen is it'll get a flat out copyright strike where they'll actually just remove the music from your thing if they detect it, and they'll turn off monetization for that post. And if that happens more than once, they'll actually shut down your channel.
But I think when I'm uploading a video, I can also say that I've got copyrighted stuff in there.
It's actually really hard to do and not get a copyright strike. It's very, very difficult. But what people do is they've run it through they run it through some kind of program that adds like background noise to it that the human ears can't detect, but it throws off the algorithm detection. They'll speed it up ever so slightly, slow it down ever so slightly. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of ways people do to get around that. And those things are everywhere on YouTube. Like, a lot of people will search and just play whatever they find and aren't that particular about the quality of the stream that they're listening to. And so I just find it interesting that as much as YouTube is the wild, wild west of music, that's being heralded as like this great alternative or this thing that nobody pays attention to, while Spotify always gets sort of all the hate. And
on top of it, like, I support an artist's right to do whatever they want with their distribution channels and to make whatever stance they want to make. But intellectually, I think it's really stupid, because a quick internet search on Google shows numerous defense contracts, Department of Defense funding, cloud with Google, of course, not YouTube directly, but cloud storage and AI. Like, you're just not going to find, nobody's going to win the purity test. Nobody's going to pass the purity test when it comes to monetizing your music online. And so I know Spotify and Daniel Ek are easy targets. They continue to be an easy target, but it's interesting. You're right that Google and YouTube just continue to get a free pass on all these types of things that should fail the same smell test that these artists are utilizing with Spotify.
Yeah. And I think I'd love to know, like
where did Joe Rogan truly make his bones? It was posting his podcast to YouTube and his clips to YouTube and people resharing all of his stuff on YouTube. It wasn't, Spotify was paying his original contract, but in terms of collecting the national consciousness, it probably happened more so on YouTube and those video clips going around than anywhere else.
Yeah. I have made the decision, though, that if Spotify doesn't have their hi-fi service available by the end of this year, I'm going to start January 1 with a new service. I haven't decided what that will be. It'll probably be either Apple or Tidal. There's things I like about each of them and dislike, but my biggest thing is I've used both Apple and Tidal off and on. Like I'll just sign up for a month, subscription here and there just to listen to them and remind myself of how stark the difference in quality is between those services and Spotify. And it is a massive difference, the sound quality. And it's really frustrating to me as a huge music fan that I'm, have to choose between the UI or the UX of Spotify and the algorithm and all that, the things that I like about it versus the sound quality. And yeah, it's not my driving factor, but it does sometimes start to feel bad listening to Spotify when you see these artists that you really love and respect sort of decry Spotify's business practices. I think it might be, for me, a little bit of a just relief to not have to deal with that anymore. But I don't know. Like, it's also like, it's these little things, but like, you and I share links all the time to music to each other. And yeah, it would be annoying if I suddenly have to start taking your links and open it up in Spotify to see what the artist is and then go find it in whatever service I'm using. Like that's annoying. There's not a...
Yeah, I find it annoying. My text friends who are Apple Music people and send me albums, and it's like, I'm not clicking that, but I'll go search for the band name and do the thing. So it's much easier for me if everybody's on Spotify.
For sure.
And honestly, as far as the quality goes, I will buy that quality tier if and when it becomes available at Spotify. But when I really think about the optimal moments where I'm listening to music, where I can take advantage of that high fidelity, they're few and far between. When I'm listening at work, it's not at a high volume, so it doesn't really matter that much. I have become an absolute fanatic of the open ear headphones by Shocks, and they are not the highest quality sound you're going to get anywhere. And so all that extra quality doesn't really do much for me 90% of the time that I'm listening to Spotify. I guess in the car over Bluetooth, if there was a quality difference with the streaming, I don't know how much difference it would make, but probably that's the place where that's probably the place where it would make the most difference.
Yeah. So whereas I listen to music with headphones at work, so for me, I notice the difference there. I notice it in my car. The majority of places that I listen to music, I notice the difference. It is like I said, I'm not making this it's not a moral stance for me. It's really just, I just want to listen to the best quality music. But like I don't know that I would have come to that decision without like this latest Spotify thing. It's like, it was like just another thing to make me think about it and just reminds me of the negative sides of listening to Spotify that even go beyond, like I said, the moral aspects of it. But yeah, I don't know. I just put out your stupid hi-fi tier already. My goodness. Like, it's ridiculous how long this has been dragged out. I mean, this has been years they've been talking about it, and I'm just getting frustrated with it.
Yeah. But I mean, if you're following the bands that are kind of tilting at windmills as far as military contracts go and just choosing another giant tech platform, how much should you let that impact your decision making?
But I don't know. I feel like Tidal's probably got to be fairly safe in that department, because I think it's Neil Young still owns it, doesn't he?
I have no idea.
I think he does. I hear you typing.
Apple could own it for all his
I don't think Apple does, unless they partnered with them. I don't know.
Tidal is currently owned by Block Inc., the company formerly known as Square.
Okay,
So,
which tells me nothing.
well, Square, wasn't that Jack Dorsey's company? I don't know.
Oh, okay. Well, then we do have some interesting things.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, it was founded in 2009 by Jack Dorsey.
I thought Tidal was Neil Young's thing.
I don't think so.
What's Neil Young's thing called? Because I know he had a music service.
Pono, Pono.
Oh, that's right. Okay, well then that's the one. If you
and Neil Young's back on Spotify, so
yeah, for sure. So
okay, so I continue my concert season up at Chautauqua, and again, I don't choose I get into every show, and so I go to every show. And not most recently, but a couple weeks ago, I got to see the Mountain Goats opening up for Guster. I wasn't particularly geeked about this show, but I figured I'd check it out. And oddly enough, I hadn't listened to either band a lot over the years. I'd probably listened to a little bit of Guster, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago. And I know I've heard some Mountain Goats over the years. And I kind of went into the show thinking I was going to enjoy Mountain Goats, maybe even more than Guster. And boy, I couldn't have been more wrong. The Mountain Goats are a good band, but their music style is just not quite for me. There's maybe a little too much jam band essence to them, and they're not a jam band, and they don't sound like a jam band, but I had a couple of kind of mean jokes about them during their performance. Number one, I told my wife after 3 or 4 songs that the Mountain Goats are just musical edging. They just keep the action rises a little bit, but they never write a hook. They never write a big chorus. It never quite pays off. The guy can sing, but it just where's the explosion? You know, they're just no payoff in the entire catalog from their live show, from what I can tell.
You got to resolve the melody. If you don't resolve the melody, it's such an awful feeling. It's one of my least favorite things in music when people don't do it. So I've never heard it called musical edging, but I love that. And I'm going to use that from now on, because that's exactly what it is. Yeah. But I'm not a big Mountain Goats guy. It was funny. I'm going to take us down a little tangent, but I had told you when you told me you were going to the show, I was trying to think of a band that for some reason, when people say Mountain Goats, made me think of some band that I knew the song. I could see what the band looked like, but I could not remember what their name was. And so I actually turned to ChatGPT, and I kind of described as much as I could what the band looked like and what their music was like. And ChatGPT told me who the band I was thinking of is. And that band is, I already forget again. Do you remember who it was?
I'm not going back through the chat to find out. I don't remember either. You can scroll through the chat.
I really, because it was a band that you said you really loved. They have a male and female singer. They're from, I want to say,
I remember I guessed Decemberists.
I want to say like Iceland, or maybe I'm only thinking Iceland for.
Was it Of Monsters and Men?
That's it. Of Monsters and Men. Yes. Mountain Goats, Of Monsters and Men.
Now that you mention Of Monsters and Men, I was on Twitter, and because I still follow a handful of music people on Twitter, and somebody had looped them in with the Lumineers and a bunch of that stomp and clap music. And it never really occurred to me, because I thought of them a little bit differently than that.
Yeah, I think of them as more folky, like.
Yeah, and I absolutely love that band. They write huge choruses and wonderful hooks.
They pay off the melody.
They do, and you know, I always forget her name, but the female singer is phenomenal, and the male singer is a change of pace, but he's really good too.
He's good. He is a good singer.
Really well.
He does not look like what you would think he would look like either, which always cracks me up too. Every time I see a video of them, I'm like, oh, that's not what I would have thought he looks like. But, yeah.
Which brings me to Guster, which I didn't know. You know, I know of Guster. They've been around for a million years. They're from Massachusetts, and I went to Boston University, so I'd heard about them as kind of semi local heroes when I was up in college there. They absolutely killed. They were amazing. Their singer, Adam Gardner, is phenomenal. They write catchy, pop-driven alternative rock songs, and they absolutely crushed. And I couldn't have been more shocked. I haven't gone back and listened to a bunch of records yet, but
Yeah.
talk about, just like opening the door in a way that I just did not expect at all. And I'm sure the Guster fans are numerous and they're loyal. And so I'm sure a lot of them are going, well, duh, they've been doing it for 30 years,
Sure.
stupid. But I found out a couple weeks ago. So I'm in now. Guster is good.
I don't know if I've ever listened to a Guster album. I know I've heard a couple songs, but I don't know if I've ever actually listened to a full album.
Well, and once again, it's from that time period when you and I were growing up, where in order to listen to a band like Guster, you would have had to buy it or steal it.
Right.
And it would have taken a lot of intent, as opposed to today where I can try out anything at any time
Yeah.
and pass or keep listening.
Yeah. Good point.
Which brings me to another show that I went to see this weekend on Sunday night. Is an artist called Leve. It's spelled Laufey. She is Icelandic Chinese from Iceland, and she is kind of orchestral jazz singer, but with kind of poppy lyrics. She's got a gigantic young female following. It was a weird crossover because I was looking at the audience and I was also feeling like it was a lot of the same people that would go see Ben Folds, a lot of drama kids, theater kids, a lot of band kids, orchestra kids. And I do mean kids because I was probably double the age of the average super fan at the show. But I wasn't super excited about it, but my 15-year-old son wanted to go because it was one of the few artists that was playing this summer that he'd actually heard of, and she just absolutely blew me away. I don't think I'll become a fan of all of her music, and I don't think I'll start listening to all of her records, but she played one song called Goddess live with the orchestra as her backdrop. By the way, yeah, she played her entire show with the Chautauqua Symphony Orchestra playing along with her. She played the piano, she played guitar, she even played a song where she was picking a cello. And she just sang unbelievably. But the song Goddess is the one that just drew me in, gave me absolute chills, goosebumps, everything in between. It is a phenomenal song. And sometimes that's all it takes, one song. Now it's like I'm following her on Instagram. I'm kind of rooting for her. I got but I told you that she's like, and I'm not trying to pigeonhole her. This is not an insult, even though I don't like Norah Jones. She's like 50% Norah Jones and 50% Olivia Rodrigo.
Yeah, I could hear that.
Did you listen to Goddess after I told you to?
Yeah, I listened to it. Yeah. And yeah, it was, I could definitely see the Olivia comparisons in terms of her her vocal delivery is very, very similar in ways, I think, to Olivia's. And it was interesting. I do think this is probably an example of one of those things where you sort of had to see it live to get it. I don't think it resonated with me quite in the same way that it did with you, but it was definitely interesting. And it was shocking when you shared with me her Spotify monthly listens and just how popular she actually is. That was absolutely just shocking to me.
Yeah. Well, it's at this moment where I can see that my video is clipping and I'm going to disconnect and reconnect, but we're going to talk about the Armed. So I'm going to kind of let you introduce who the Armed are, and we'll start talking about their new record, and I'll be right back.
Sure. So the Armed is, I still ostensibly call them a hardcore band, but they are so far outside your traditional hardcore. I've seen them called post-hardcore, which I suppose probably makes a little bit more sense. But they're a band out of Detroit. They've been around, I don't know, almost 10 years now. And this is a band that has always been sort of cheeky about the way they handle their business. They like to subvert sort of expectation. They have always been sort of secretive and building a mythology and a backstory to them that's obscured who's actually in the band. You could go and see them, multiple different times live and see different people on stage and not really understand, like, well, who is this band? What is this band? And, they've operated this way for a long time, and they've since sort of dropped that persona, and they've talked about the fact that this was all sort of done as a social experiment to sort of see like, hey, in today's day and age when, information is everywhere and everybody knows everything about anybody, you can Google anybody and find out everything about them. They wanted to see, can we be obscure in this musical environment? Can we still have mystery and, distort reality? And can we make facts not be facts? And it was sort of this whole big ruse that they did. And they carried this out over a 3-album span that they sort of referred to as a trilogy, maybe like a unofficial trilogy. But yeah, they did Only Love, Ultra Pop, and then Perfect Savior was the trilogy. So then in 2024, they supposed to go on this tour and they suddenly had to cancel the tour, cited sort of financial reasons. And it was kind of a big deal. It was in that time period when a bunch of different bands were canceling their tours, but I think it really impacted them. And I think it was a demoralizing thing for them. And they went right into the studio and recorded this album. And so this album is called The Future Is Here and Everything Must Be Destroyed.
Everything needs to be destroyed. By the way, my camera's not working, but I'm back.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So this album, they said, there's no theme to it. There's no pretense to it. This was just them going into the studio without an agenda and just writing what they feel. And I would argue what they did was give us the most comprehensive, not like a rock opera, but like the most like thematically on point album that they've ever actually made. This is the most angry, visceral, chaotic album that they've ever made. I thought it was funny. I actually wrote down this to make sure I had it. Their lead singer, Tony Wolski, here's his comment about what he said this album is. And this is a direct quote. This record rejects sanitized, G-rated rebellion curated for upper middle class tastes. It's music for a statistically wealthy population that somehow can't afford food or medicine, endlessly scrolling past vacation photos, gym selfies, and images of child amputees in the same feed. It reflects the dissociation required just to exist in that reality. And I'm here to tell you, they accomplished that. You feel everything he just said. You feel it at almost every moment of this album from beginning to end. It is an absolutely wild, untethered ride from beginning to end. It's abrasive.
Well, let me read some lyrics. I'm not usually a lyrics guy, but
yeah.
Purity Drag, the second track on the album, just nothing is my fault, nothing is my fault, nothing is my fault. Purest of them all, nothing is my fault. I am divine, your privilege, my presence. Purest of them all, nothing is my fault. I am divine. And it's like, I know that sounds kind of artistic or maybe pretentious, but if you hear the delivery and you hear the way that this band is presenting it, they do one of the things that I talk about a lot being really important to me in any of my favorite music. And it's presented as they're saying the most important thing that they think they need to say. Everything that they say feels like the most important thing that they could possibly say on this entire record from beginning to end. It is caustic. It is rebellious. It is loud. It is abrasive. And you can just feel the seething come out with every single song. If it was a little bit cleaner is not the right word, but if it was a little bit easier to understand the lyrics, it would be a Rage Against the Machine record.
Yeah, that's good. And what's funny too about the lyrics is like I read the Pitchfork review, and the review is almost entirely about the lyrics, which was so fascinating to me because I feel like the lyrics are important on this. Like Tony had a lot to say about the world that we exist in today. And I think I would actually compare this whole album to me is like taking what Foxing did on Hell 99 and turning it into an album. Hell 99 for me was like this visceral moment that just captured everything I was feeling last year.
But with much less sarcasm, by the way.
Yes. But that's taking that feeling and expanding it to an entire album and not letting up from that is kind of what the Armed have done here. And so those lyrics are important, but it almost matters more how he says all these things, more so almost than what they're saying. Well, I'll mention it now since we're on the lyrics. The first song, Well Made Play, has the lyrics, well made play, life maker, sickness is a love that never comes, not enough, never enough. You are blind to your own reflection. And that well made play line to me feeds into the final track, which is A More Perfect Design, which is, I said to Craig that the song is totally unhinged, and it is crazy beyond words. But throughout all this like rambunctious, like caustic chaos, it ends with him saying, remembering what I just said, how the first track ended, goes into this one ending with, don't let it make you go numb. Don't let it dull your compassion. Don't let them tell you you're wrong. Don't let them claim this is balance. And then the final line that he delivers on this is, don't let them question your love. And I find that so fascinating that he ended this album with a sort of like turnabout and almost like a call to arms. Like, yes, everything can be suffocating right now. It's confusing. There's just chaos everywhere around us. We exist in this weird reality where, and this is the irony of sort of the like what I was talking about in terms of how they did this 3-album trilogy where they were trying to subvert like what reality is. And like this album then comes out at a time in which we feel more subverted than ever in terms of what reality is, what are facts. And it's not just political, it's societal, it's technological, with AI and social media and things like that. You can question anything and everything. And it's like, it just can almost weigh you down with it being so heavy. And he ends it with, again, don't let it make you go numb. Don't let it dull your compassion. Don't let them tell you you're wrong. Don't let them claim this is balance. Don't let them question your love. I just adore the fact that he ended it on that note.
I love that. I also wanted to reference the other lyrics that stuck out to me on this record were from Kingbreaker. There's a section in the middle where he says, the liars are in the void. My only friends are fucking scum. How are we as thick as thieves and still alone? In the noise, we are all just ghosts. And like for me, like you said, it could be political, it could be technological, it could be all of it. But all I could think about is the way that we interact as a society, each other, online, half anonymous. We're all the same and we're thick as thieves, but we're all still alone in the way that we've decided to present ourselves in this current version of society, with louder voices, but not really talking to each other.
Yeah, that's so good. And it's so like spot on. Like they really did such a tremendous job of capturing what it feels like in our society right now. And I think that really deserves this much attention that we've given. This is the most you and I have probably talked about lyrics and themes of an album in quite a while. Like we tend to talk mostly about the music. And I think it's important in telling that like what we're focusing on is what this album is trying to say. Because I do think it's important, and I do think it's a great accomplishment for them, and they deserve a lot of credit that they were able to harness that energy and that spirit and really put it down on record and delivers. Kudos to them for the lyrics, but I also do want to talk some about the musical side of this as well, because there's a lot going on musically on this album as well. I wondered if you maybe wanted to talk a little, because you talked a little bit about the drumming and the production of this. I wondered if you wanted to maybe talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so I felt like everything in the production felt purposeful and like a choice. The record's called The Future Is Here and Everything Needs to Be Destroyed. And I couldn't escape how chaotic and insane the drums sound. Just dirty. And not dirty like late stage Metallica, it's going to piss you off, but dirty like it gives you the vibe that you're supposed to get from the rest of this record. On my first couple listens, I felt like maybe it was a little bit uneven, but the more that I've really digested it and felt the way that everything feels like it's in its right place, I really grew to enjoy I think the issue I had was it felt like it softened up for a track just before the end. At first it felt out of place, but it was the perfect, last little take a breath before we finish the record with a more perfect design.
I love that you and I both resolved that the exact same way, because I had that exact same experience. The second to last track, Heathen, is a very very big outlier as you're listening to this album. Like this album does not let up whatsoever through the first 9 tracks. It is just blistering nonstop. And then Heathen comes along and is this total left turn. And it like I don't even know how to describe what this song is all doing. There's saxophone in it. There's twitchy electronic drums. There's a beautiful vocal melody. It's very surreal. And the first time listening to this album, it really does take you out of the album for a second, and you're like, oh wait. And I did like the song the first time I listened to it. I
Me too.
liked the song, but I was like, but this seems almost like it would have fit more on Perfect Saviors, or you and I had discussed like maybe in the middle is like a more middle interlude, like kind of like oh shoot. What are the Deaf Heaven interludes called on Lonely People? Do you remember? Whatever the interludes are called. The second one. I thought maybe it could have done that if it would have been more in the middle, because this song Heathen does also do this thing where it starts kind of one way.
The incidental 1, 2, and 3.
So maybe a little bit like incidental 2. But after listening to this album a couple times, it's actually exactly where it needs to be. Like this is the perfect last second. Like you said, I was going to say the exact same way. That last deep breath you take before like you hit the like ultimate climax of this album, which is A More Perfect Design, the final track. And
which, by the way, it also does that perfect and that it does that perfect thing that you and I love about records that are complete works. Mm-hmm. You finish A More Perfect Design and you're ready to go back straight into Well Made Play and start the record over again. I will give a little bit of room to the possibility that because you and I just love this record so much that we might be apologists for it already. Even maybe that is still actually a flaw, but because we're just unabashed fans, we find a way to justify any decision a band makes if we love their record or not.
I mean, that definitely could be, and that's part of being a fan for sure. But
you can tell, like, I'm full of self-hatred and overthinking myself all the time, where I'm looking for a way that maybe it's my fault.
Yeah, right. But yeah, I just think that, well, to that point though, I will say 2 things. One, in doing prep for this episode, I always like to see like, well, what are the naysayers saying about this album? So I actually asked Claude AI to find the negative reviews of this album so I could know what the naysayers were saying. And it actually came back and told me it couldn't find any negative reviews of this album. So I was like, oh, well, okay. And I've done this before. This is the first time it has ever said, I can't find any negative reviews of this album. Now, maybe since, maybe somebody's written one since. But I also made the point that, but maybe that's also a fact of the only people who are reviewing an album by The Armed are people who are kind of already in the bag for them. So maybe you're already predisposed to like this album. I don't know. But as far as the production is concerned, I did see, like, I always go to Reddit, and try and find what Reddit music fans are saying about things. I saw a couple people complaining about the production of this album.
It's a stark contrast to Perfect Saviors.
It is to Perfect Saviors, but not so much to the previous 2 albums before that. They always kind of had that where they do this mix, and I think they do it on purpose. Kurt Ballou from Converge has been a huge part in producing their previous albums. He's helped them record them and played on them. And I don't think that they make albums that sound like this on accident or because they don't know what they're doing. I think it's intentional, and I think it's to add that, again, that element of what they are always trying to do. It's pure chaos, distraction, noise, and it's up to you to search and find what they're doing inside of that production. And the more you listen to The Armed, the more you're going to hear it, I promise you. And anybody who's listening to this who's not familiar, you might listen to The Armed for the first time and be like, what are these guys talking about? This is just noise. It's just loud. It can be hard to figure out what they're actually doing. The more you listen to them, the more you get it. And once you start to get it, you really understand what this band is doing so well and what very few other bands can do. And I'm not just talking out my ass here. I feel like I can prove it. And my proof is just look up any live video of this band performing live. They nail this sound live. None of this is accidental. This is not them making noise for the sake of noise. Everything is exactly where it's supposed to be in terms of, the production and the sound and the noise. They know what they're doing, and they bring it in the exact same way live. Their live shows are pure. I need more words beside chaos, because I'm pretty sure I've said it a million times in this album, but like that's what this band is. It's controlled chaos. But it's also like it's enthusiasm, it's idealism, it's, I don't know, it's just something that I don't know that a lot of other bands, well, probably not a lot of bands try to do it, but I don't know how many other bands can really pull it off.
Yeah, and it's one of the things that, because you and I talk about so many different kinds of music, it's important to mention that a lot of people who like the 90s alternative rock that we also talk about might not like this record, and statements are only as powerful as the size of the audience that they're able to garner. And I mentioned Rage Against the Machine earlier, and the real magic of Rage Against the Machine was that they were able to bring rap fans, rock fans, metal fans, and then somehow cross over to almost like an arena rock level.
Yeah.
This is not going to do that. No matter
Never.
how great these lyrics are, or how much you and I laud the production and say how incredible it is not digestible for your average music fan. And when I say average music fan, I'm talking about the normies we talked about in the first part on Spotify or on YouTube. And even the majority of my friends who I talk music with, I will not recommend this to them because it is not in their wheelhouse at all. This is a niche of a niche of a niche when you're looking at the country at large and the world at large. So I always think it's important to say those things, just because, we get into this when we talk about Death Heaven too.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, not everybody's going to be into a melodic black metal band,
Yeah.
It's just not going to happen. But it's a shame, because any bit of attention we can give to an artistic endeavor like this.
Yeah.
I mean, the degree of difficulty and what they pulled off on this record, even though it is niche, it's like one of those Oscar movies that the vast majority of people are like, that's unwatchable. But all the screenwriters and the directors of photography look at the accomplishment and they're blown away and they vote for it, and it somehow wins Oscars.
Yeah.
But the box office is like $12.
Well, I think the proof of this is also just like, if you look at their tour that they announced for this, again, some of this is surely a reaction again to the unfortunate 2024, cancellation of their tour. But, they're playing LA, New York, Portland, Chicago,
Of course, their hometown of Detroit.
Yeah. The big cities is where they're going. They're not playing the in-between places anymore, at least not on this tour. At one hand, you got to do what you got to do to survive, but it does make me sad for them that you put so much effort in crafting this thing that means so much to music fans like us, but it's unfortunate that it's just never going to connect with the wider audience in the same way, because you do have to spend some sweat equity in giving this multiple listens to really grasp everything that's going on. Like I still like, I talked about that there's sax in Heathens. There's also saxophone in A More Perfect Design. Well Made Play has some saxophone. Like I'm sure that's probably even in other places that I'm forgetting. So they're doing like all these like different sounds and textures that you'll hear and you'll pick up on different things. But some of these songs are also like Sharp Teeth, the song that Kara sings the lead vocals on. Like, that's a really good song. Like, that is a fairly approachable song that I do think some people could get into. I Steal What I Want. Yeah.
Did you see their international dates? They're playing arena dates with Biffy Clyro.
Huh. Wow.
The giant, in America, we would call them basketball arenas. I'm not sure what sports are played in those arenas in London and England and Birmingham and Manchester and Cardiff.
Yeah.
And Glasgow, Scotland. But they're playing 9 dates in arenas with a very big, straightforward alternative rock band. I was telling you about Biffy Clyro a couple weeks ago because I like them very much. but their pop sensibilities are just off the charts. They're
And that is a
not.
band that is enormous, especially in Europe.
It's so funny because I added one of their songs to my playlist recently, and some different people heard it and they're like, "What is this?" I'm like, "The biggest band in the world that you've never heard of," because they never really made the jump to America.
Yep. It's really wild when you see them play European festivals and just see the size of the crowds that they play to. It's like, oh my gosh, like they are huge over there.
They
So
have,
that's a good get
you
for
know,
the Armed.
they have this one song called "Many of Horror," and it's my favorite song by them. And when you see, to your point, when you see them play it live, it's usually in front of like 100,000 people at a festival, and everybody's singing along and waving their arms.
Yeah.
And nobody in America, essentially, statistically, knows or has heard that song.
Yeah. I think they just played at Glastonbury this year. I think I saw some videos from that. Maybe it was the previous one. I'm not sure, but yeah.
They've played all those big festivals at least once, and they're kind of a power trio, wonderful vocals. But like, I'm trying to think of a comparison to an American rock band that's that big. I wouldn't guess that they would be considered cool. Like somewhere like they're not anything like Muse, but they're kind of like Muse, where
I know what you mean.
Muse did kind of make the jump across to America.
At least briefly, yeah.
But how many people do you know? I love Muse, by the way, but how many people do you know who think Muse is cool?
Yeah, and certainly not now anymore. Like they had a moment. They had a moment, but it went by pretty quick.
And now all of a sudden the Armed are opening up for a band like that. Imagine the Armed opening up for Muse.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. That's great. I didn't know that they got that, so I'm very happy for that for them. Just a real quick, we're running out of time here, but just to go through a couple other songs, on this to talk about real quick. I Steal What I Want has sort of almost a post-punk sound to it. That's got some catchy melodies in it. Local Millionaire, that's got some catchy moments in it. My absolute favorite track on this album is Gave Up, track number 9. They do this thing where it's sort of a twist on the quiet, loud dynamic of grunge, where the verse is scatterbrained and all over the place. It's like casting out this like wide sound. And then when they get to the verse, it all just hones in and it slows down to like halftime, and just this super powerful where Tony just lets out these just guttural screams. And then it's like followed up with these angelic harmonies right behind it. It's so well executed. I really love that one a lot. And they're like, it's worth mentioning too. I don't know sometimes if, you talk about like leading the witness. I don't know if it's just the fact that Troy Van Leeuwen plays guitar on this album, and he's played with the Armed for a little while now. But I hear so much Queens of the Stone Age influence in a lot of these songs, whether it be something like the intro to Kingbreaker has a very Queens of the Stone Age vibe to it. Grace Obscure sounds a lot like Sick 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 from Era Vulgaris on the Queens of Stone Age album. How about like what a charmed life Troy has quietly had? That dude has played in so many great bands. That dude is just quiet, and everything he plays in is good. Like he's really had a really great career as a guitarist.
Failure, A Perfect Circle, Eagles of Death Metal.
Yeah, Queens of the Stone Age, obviously. Did he play with Smashing Pumpkins maybe for a minute?
It's not showing up here on the Wikipedia, but anything's possible.
It's hard to remember who Billy has all played with over the years, but yeah, I think that pretty much covers, I think, everything that I kind of wanted to say about this album. I'm very enthusiastic about this, as I'm sure you guys can tell. I don't know that everybody will feel the same sort of way about it, but I would say, like, if you want to push yourself and listen to something interesting, give this one a shot and see what you think. I don't know. Do you have anything else you want to say about this?
No, I agree with all of what you said about giving this one a shot. And at least I always tell people that, and you and I have talked about this before, that becoming a fan of new music is hard work. It's not like when we were teenagers driving around and rock radio was programmed for us, and we just didn't have that many options. And so you'd fall in love with some of it, you would hate other stuff, and you'd surf the channels and whatever else. But in this day and age, if you're interested in new music, you kind of have to listen to a record 3 times.
Yeah. Great point.
I can't tell you how many records that I end up not liking that I listen to at least twice.
I've even had the opposite happen sometimes too, where I'm enthusiastic about something on the first listen, and then after I listen to it a couple times, I'm not as enthusiastic about it. But the Armed have always been a band that I've had to listen to a couple times. Even so, Perfect Saviors was by far their most approachable album. Like that is an album if you want to sort of jumping off point to get into this band,
which is hysterical because it was my jumping off point with the Armed. I'd never really listened to them, or I don't think I'd ever even heard of them before that one came out and you told me to listen to it.
And what's great about that is that gave you or them the equity to get you to then be prepared to really dive into this one. Because like this album is not your wheelhouse, really. I actually wasn't sure how you were going to feel about this, knowing that Perfect Saviors was your introduction to them. So it makes me happy that you've had like almost all of the same reactions to all the same points that I had about this. And
let me tell you what's different about this one. So this is, I don't know what you'd call this, post-hardcore or whatever.
That's, I guess, the best you can call it.
This is my style of screaming, though.
Yeah.
The barking and all that kind of stuff is a hard sell for me, but the kind of more white noise screaming and screeching is kind of my cup of tea when it comes to metal.
That's a good point, because it does harken back to screamo and emo, those roots where you're like the barking vocals are more about the energy of the song, and I think
they're percussive.
Yeah, and I think these style of screaming is more like you are like, again, you touched on this. He truly believes he's saying the most important thing in the world, and when he's screaming these, and you feel that in the way he delivers these.
Yeah. So just a little upcoming type, coming next from this podcast. You and I both started listening to a record also on Death Wish today called Reveries by Bone Flower. I have the feeling we might find a way to talk about that one in the future. And then a band we talked about in the Hop Along episode a couple of weeks ago, the guitar player for Hop Along originally started with a band out of Philly called Algernon Cadwallader that got back together recently, and now they've got a new record coming out soon that Ian Cohen is saying might be his record of the year. And so we've got one track from that one, and now all of a sudden I'm super excited to hear it.
Yeah, it is a really, really good song. I mean, it's a great song.
But also it's bullshit, by the way, that Ian has early access to these records and we don't. We need to at least get to the point that we get early access.
He had heard this album before this reunion was announced, because he let it slip, not who it was about, but he had let it slip in a recent episode of IndieCast where he had said his album of the year was probably an album that hasn't even been announced yet. And then this came out this week, this announcement. It was like, oh, that's what he was talking about.
That's awesome.
So he had heard it already then. So that's pretty cool. If anybody ever wants us to listen to their albums beforehand, like, we'll do it.
And you hear the way we talk about the stuff that we like. We'll open our platform. We'd be happy to talk to anybody about their music.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, I think that about does it for us. Appreciate everybody dealing with our technical difficulties. And you can find everything that we do at albumofrecord.com, all the podcasting platforms. And yes, we are still on YouTube. So even though my video didn't work for the second half of this episode, we'll be on YouTube. You'll get a whole lot of Andrew going on.
A whole lot of my bald head. But I'm not sweating, so that's good.
So thanks so much for listening. We'll talk to you next time. It's been the Album of Record podcast.